how you doing?
Oh man, do you have an argument for God's existence?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, what is it?
Order and creation points to an intelligent mind.
What about an intelligent mind?
Yeah, what
I'm
was
saying
it?
order and creation points to an intelligent mind because in my experience, everything that's on planet Earth has been invented by an intelligent mind. So for me, I believe that everything on Earth is not accidental. Somebody must have sat down and decided, hey, I want to create the Earth or I wanted to create the universe.
Well, for you to say that everything that you've experienced comes from a mind, that's just assuming that God created all the natural things from the get-go. So, I mean, if you don't assume that, then there's only a limited scope of things that have been created by a mind, or at least that you've seen, because you haven't seen anyone create a tree from their mind. You haven't seen anyone create, Earth from their mind.
I'm not really. I'm meaning because God is supernatural, but I'm meaning like for us as humans, as natural things. We've actually seen a shirt. Somebody must have sat down and created that shirt, or let's say a building. Somebody must have sat down and created the architecture and everything, and then the building was there. Same thing with the universe. Somebody must have actually sat down and created the universe. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure, yeah. Wait, so why do you think God exists?
Wait, pardon?
Because everything that we've seen has come from something else. When I see a building, I know that it's been made by something. When I see a shirt on someone's back, I know that someone made the shirt. And so when I see the universe, I know that someone made the universe. And so when I see God, I know that someone made God.
Well, I think what Kason said was what I would say, right? Like, we have things that presumably we might say weren't created, like the grass in front of your house. Like, that wasn't really created. Unless you want to say that, like, we see minds create things, what explains the universe might best be a mind, because they typically tend to create things, but I think like the reasons why minds tend to create things are different than what the reasons why God would tend to create something. So I'm not sure how that induction would follow.
By the way, and also another reason I argue is because if there is no God, then really emotions don't really have any real value to them. They're just chemical reactions. They're nothing more than that. There's no like real
I'm a
definition of
moral
love.
realist, so you don't need to worry about like objective morality here.
Why would anyone believe that emotions don't have value if God doesn't exist? And why would someone necessarily need to think that emotions are strictly just some chemical reaction in the brain just because that they're an atheist? Like, someone could obviously just not agree with that and still not believe in God.
Well, then how would you explain emotions to me? Because you remember you don't believe in God, so how would you explain an emotion to me?
Well, I just asked you a question.
What was the question again?
Why would anyone believe that just because God doesn't exist, emotions don't have value?
Well, what value would emotions have if there is no God? Basically, it would just be chemical reactions,
Yes, let me
basically.
ask you that.
Oh, dude, I don't know.
We're starting off on a good note. Like, let's just stick to like the original thing that you said, right? Like the reasons why minds create things would seemingly be different than the reasons why God might want to create something. So like, I'm not sure if the induction would follow.
Induction.
If the induction would follow, given that like the priors that we have for created things are different than the universe and whatnot.
Word.
Well, if there is no God, then I really wonder then what emotions will be rather more than chemical reactions, because there is no God, there is no real value to them. I really wonder, without God, then what are emotions really?
Well, someone could just not be a reductionist. They could think that there's a soul, or that there's like some aspect of the mind that's a different type of substance than the like kind of physical substance that bodies have,
Like
and
I'm an
so
atheist, I believe in souls.
they might think that emotions are just not clearly reducible to chemical reactions in the brain. But that like all those conversations, they don't have much relevance to God's existence.
Well, they do if you think about it.
Okay, I'm thinking about it.
Well, remember you mentioned something about souls. So who would have created that soul?
Why would someone need to be convinced that someone created the soul in the first place?
Because order and creation points to an intelligent mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
hmm
I don't know if you want to keep going with him, Kason.
There's no one else. Get Haru up here.
Oh God.
It's okay. You can. No, it's okay. You can tell me. You can tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think that the reasons that we know as to why people create things are the same reasons as to why God might want to create things. So I don't think the sort of reasoning that you're doing, right, where like, hey, we see people create these sort of things, which we have this thing, and given that we have reasons, or given that we have like background knowledge on why people create things here, I don't think that same background knowledge would apply to why God might want to create things. So I don't think that the inference that you're doing there follows through.
So, by the way, do you believe in God or no?
No, I'm an atheist.
Oh, okay, no. Oh, wait, sorry, Paishi. Sorry, I interrupted. I'll let you
No, 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 it's fine. I just it sounds like maybe you're speaking more about maybe like indexing emotion to like some sort of like telos or like purpose. Cuz like I don't know like if you acknowledge an emotion exists, I don't know like what its constituent parts or what it's comprised of would have to do with its relevance. Like an emotion would be what have more like more relevance if it was made of soul bits versus like matter or something. I guess I don't really understand the contention unless you're saying that like the role an emotion plays in a bigger picture in respect to like some sort of like aim for the emotion. Is that
No,
what you want to say? Like,
no, what I'm meaning to say is, if there is no, basically, what I'm saying, if there is no God, then basically that means, because atheists mostly believe in science and stuff, or because remember, you don't most atheists don't really believe in religion, so that means you narrow down stuff to you. Basically, most atheists that I've talked to narrow things down to matter and energy. So basically, to most atheists, emotions are just basically chemical reactions.
but
There is no
my point
real
is you
value
still
or
recognize
anything.
it. My point is you still recognize it as an emotion. It'd be like me saying like I've found like it's like I have this like food or something and I consider it delicious until I found out that it was like its actual like atomic composition was different than I imagined. So I no longer considered it delicious. Like that doesn't make much sense, right? That's why I was asking like like or maybe you want to plug this into like a bigger narrative like oh like the emotion makes no sense in respect to like it having like no aim or goal or something which is directed by God, but just saying like it's made of matter so therefore it's like has no reason. Well, we already acknowledge it as an emotion whether it's made of matter or soul bits or spirit. Like I fail to see the relevance of its like atomic composition, you know? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I understand. First of all, emotions aren't really directed by God. It's basically God gave us human being free will, so we are allowed to feel whatever we want. If you want to feel angry, you can feel angry. That's why most people say love is a choice. You choose to love someone. So emotions basically, but the thing about emotions is, I feel like there's something more to emotions than just chemical reactions. I feel like love actually may direct to a God that actually created us with love. That's why love feels so wonderful, or hate feels
so it is
so
tied to
bad.
like, yeah, it is tied to more of like a, that's why I was asking if it's tied to like more of like a telos, like
Yeah.
okay.
All right. So can you argue that God doesn't exist?
Did you ask for an argument for why God doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think. Oh, if you want to give an argument,
You can go if you want.
there's a lot of wind right now. So I think it's best.
Well, the idea is that if God were to exist, he would want to enter into a loving relationship with everyone, and for a loving relationship to occur, the both members in the party need to actually think that the other one exists or believe that the other person exists. And so this kind of just comes down to, if God wants a loving relationship with every single person that exists, then he would provide the means necessary to allow every single person that exists to actually believe in him. But obviously that's not the case, because there's a lot of people who don't believe in God. So God doesn't exist.
Well, I understand that, but first of all, the reason God doesn't do it is because God gave us free will, so we can choose to love Him if we want to. So
Yeah.
it's not that He doesn't want. So He wants all of us to love Him, but He can't really force all of us to love Him. He gave us free will, so you can choose that. Hey, I want to love and follow God, or no, I don't want to love and follow God. So that's why many people go off. And that's why you see
Well,
nowadays modern Christians don't really force religion. Okay, obviously there are those who do, but most of us don't anymore
yeah.
because
There's two things I want to say to this. First, we could just change the conversation to non-resistant non-believers, because there are definitely non-believers who aren't resistant to the idea of God. Um, but second, I don't, I'm not necessarily convinced that, because remember, what's needed is that people actually believe that God exists. I'm not convinced that people can choose whether or not they believe that they're actually in a relationship with God. People, I mean, maybe there's an argument that could be given for that. I don't think that people can choose that specifically, but even if they were, that still seems to be an issue with. Well, that
I
actually would
do.
actually still be. Yeah, sorry, go on.
So I was asking, do you believe in God or not?
Yeah.
If you do believe in God, that's a choice. You choose to believe in God. There are those who also don't choose to believe in God. So
Well, I don't
it-
think that I chose to believe in God.
I think, well, do you or do you not?
Yeah, I believe in God, but my beliefs aren't my choice. Like I don't choose my beliefs. Presumably, when you say you believe something, you take the world to be like true in a certain way, depending on what the proposition in question is. I don't choose what I'm convinced of or what I take to be true. That follows from prior commitments that I have on how I see things. That I'm also not convinced that I necessarily choose what like kind of coheres with my overall view.
So then it is very simple. You can just collect evidence, or you can go based off what you, because I also have very many of my atheist friends that choose not to believe in God, even if I've argued with them and I've showed them countless evidence that God does exist. They still choose to refuse them.
Yeah, they probably don't think that it's like good evidence or something.
Yes. So, but whether good really, if you look at evidence, it's a little bit subjective. You
Not
can, yeah, a
necessarily.
little bit. Yeah, it's not necessary, but it's a little. It's either up to you to decide: do I trust this evidence or do I not trust this evidence? If you do trust the evidence, go with it. If you don't trust it, that's still your choice.
Yeah, I don't think it really comes down to that, but
It's okay. I understand.
Even
For me, that's why I
determinists.
do, because even in science, because if you look at it in science, there's a lot of research that's done, and still these days there's still scientists, even with proof that the system. Look at with Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton proved that his system worked, but Albert Einstein still decided to refute it. So I do believe that
what is this
you can
supposed to
choose to
show?
believe in pardon.
Just because he chose to refute it doesn't mean that he chose to not believe in it or something. Like it might mean that he had motivation to try to dismiss the view.
Yeah,
But I
but
mean, that doesn't mean he particularly chose which attitude he had towards the evidence.
I think that's what that means. That's for me personally. It's okay. I understand though.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, LT. You wanted to speak?
Sorry, I have a chip in my mouth. I just asked Kason if they were determinist. It seems to be the case that he doesn't think that choices are undetermined. Or wait, yeah, undetermined. Yeah, excuse me.
Am I a determinist?
Correct.
I'm not sure. I
Are
don't
you
really.
agnostic on determinism, or do you not know what determinism is?
I know what determinism is.
Oh, so you're just
I'm
agnostic. Sure.
Yeah, I'm agnostic. Do you think, Jason, that like this is sort of like a really derailed? I don't think we're gonna get more out of that conversation, but like, do you think that like a slippery slope, or I mean, companions and guilt argument for moral realism, works decently or no? I have no clue. Because I've sort of like, over like the past couple of months, been more into like moral realism, and seem to find it a little bit more intuitive than I used to.
Atheistic
He said
realism,
that he
or
said Donald Trump is a Thomist. Your chump might actually.
I can barely type that out with a straight face.
Are you a theist, LT Studio Queer?
no, I'm torn. You know what I mean? I have intuitions that lead me towards something, at the very least, beyond the physical. But I think that's because I was raised Catholic. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I live
yeah.
practically as a physicalist,
Okay.
even though that's pretty low tier.
So you're basically close to agnostic, right?
Close to agnostic, but practically I live as an atheist.
Yeah. If we're putting it that way, like, I'm probably like an agnostic, like that's definitely more sympathetic to theism evidentially, but practically a Catholic.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm not Catholic, but I do believe the Catholics are a little bit too. It's I tried, but I think Catholics are a little bit too strict for me. But that's for me.
Yeah.
Do you take what sort of view on morality do you have with God, Casey?
What's my say that one more time? You like cut out.
So what sort of view do you have of morality with God?
Or like whether or not like he's responsive to reasons or like what he's motivated by or what?
No, like
Epistemically?
what is like under your view of God, right? Like, how would you say that things are bad or good? Like, presumably, like you're not a divine command theorist.
No, I'm not.
Good things, like good things are grounded in like the nature of God, or like,
I mean, I'm inclined to. I find like the virtue ethics and natural law stuff pretty attractive. I've just as of recently been looking into like all the objections that people say, make natural law like a complete trash and terrible view. Some of them I'm sympathetic to. Some of them I don't actually think are too good. I was watching the discussion between Joe Schmidt and the other like prominent natural law theorists, but that's at least how I think about things. Like I don't know if I'm necessarily like convinced of those views wholesale because I have issues with them, but that's like when I think about whether or not something's right or wrong, that's kind of like how I kind of conceptually consult things.
I have a video saved. I was gonna watch it tonight alongside the video that you told me about libertarian free will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know what you think of it after you watch it. Because I'm going to have to rewatch it to make sure I heard everything correctly. Because I was watching it in my car while I was driving.
Which video?
It's like this guy, isn't it? Like on YouTube, his name's like Faith Because of Reason. And he makes like these super, or not all of them are long. Some of them are like 20 minutes. But he has like super long videos, like defending like a lot of things that are relevant towards discussions we like having. And Jack Angstreich likes him. He thinks that he's like really knowledgeable and sorry, I was reading Ranch's comment. He's really knowledgeable and pretty honest, and he made like a video giving an abductive argument for libertarian free will.
By the way, host, what is your view on God's morality?
Well, I'm an atheist, but if I was a theist, I'd probably say like good and bad are sort of divorced from God, but they exist due to God. Or, like God doesn't really control or have any say in what good and bad is, nor do I think like I would say that good and bad is intrinsic to God's nature. I'd probably say something like God sort of grounds reality, and alongside, or like a part of reality is objective good and bad, and he sort of
Yeah, I also say that because most people like saying, "Oh, God is bad because He allows suffering to happen." I'm like, but 90% of suffering is actually human cause. It's us who choose to cause suffering to others. It's not really God's fault.
You think 90% of suffering is human caused?
Look at everything that happens with first of all with exploitation and rape and murder and all the bad things. It's not God that does it, it's
Well,
human beings
you're
that
giving
do it.
examples of, so those are examples of sufferings that humans cause, but there are also examples of suffering humans don't cause, like disease and starvation.
Those are stuff. Well, starvation is partly human but not fully human.
A lot of
Wait,
times it's just not human at all. A lot of
and
times people starve because they just don't have food. It's not like they control whether they had food or not. I
yeah,
mean,
but
sometimes that might be true, but not
yeah,
usually.
it's not that they don't have food, it's that they don't have money to buy food.
That's the same. That's okay. Well, that you're.
Money is a human concept, not a godly
I know, but
concept.
you're like you're nitpicking at points that aren't relevant. Like if you don't have money to buy food, you de facto don't have food.
Yeah, but I'm saying money is a human concept. It's not a godly concept. Maybe if
No,
it was
I
stuff
agree.
like
Money's a.
farming and stuff, maybe if it
No,
was stuff like farming, I would agree. But
I agree. Money's a human construct. All I'm saying is that there are people who starve because they don't have food and they don't have control over whether they have food.
yeah, yeah, true, actually. Yeah, but also stuff like diseases are caused by microorganisms, and of which those microorganisms, yes, they cause harm, but they also do good for the
Well,
environment. Same thing as earthquakes. The
you're
earthquakes are
making points
caused
that
by
aren't really
tectonic.
relevant. I thought so. You're saying that 90% of suffering is human caused,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like you just aren't able to remotely support a claim like that.
No, I am able to support. I just mentioned all the bad things that humans
You
have
gave
done.
examples of things that were caused by humans that are
Mm-hmm.
suffering, but that doesn't show that 90% of suffering is caused by humans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so for example, I can give examples of people who are short, like you, but that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
show that 90% of people are short. Or I can give examples of people who are dumb, but it doesn't show that 90% of people are.
Oh. Still, well, what are the causes of suffering?
Well, I mean, sometimes suffering is caused by your environment, or
Mm-hmm,
sometimes suffering is caused by like certain deficiencies, like lack of certain things. So
mm-hmm,
those seem to be like the two, besides from other humans, those seem to be two overarching causes. Because environmental causes would include things like natural disasters, whatnot,
mm-hmm,
um, diseases, old age,
mm-hmm.
whatever. And so it just seems, if anything, it seems like the majority of suffering is not human caused.
I think it is actually because if you, I remember I mentioned the examples. They're all caused by humans. It's not
Well, you
God that.
believe that, but you have no reason to believe that. You just believe it because it feels good.
No, I don't. No, I don't believe because it feels good. Because then I'll be a hypocrite.
Well, then what's the evidence for it?
So how
If
many?
your belief isn't based on just feelings, then why would you believe that?
Well, because I just mentioned evidence.
Oh, well, you gave examples of things that are caused by humans, but that doesn't show that 90% of suffering is caused by humans.
It well how well compared to disasters and humans, who cause suffering the most?
So now you're just not supporting your claim.
No, I'm trying to
It just
support
look, it
you.
just if
I'm
you
asking.
just base your view on this just feels good to me, just like say that and I can end the discussion. I don't want to talk to someone who just goes off what they feel. It's just not interesting.
I'm not. It is you that's not really listening to me. You're just basically canceling my ideas. You're not really listening,
I am
honestly.
listening. I'm asking you to support your views, and it just seems like there isn't. And every time I push a little, it's just nothing. And it just seems like this is just how you just feel that way. And if that's true, I just don't want to talk to you. You're just
Well,
not
it
worth
is.
talking to if that's the
Well, what I'm saying is true. Is that you're just
okay.
deciding not to listen, and that's okay.
You can
I
say
don't
it's
mind.
true, but that's not providing a reason to think it's true.
Okay, we'll just end the conversation.
Yeah, the conversation ends when your view isn't based on anything, but I feel this way. That will end the conversation.
No, I'm not saying it out of feeling, because then I would be a
Well,
hypocrite.
you haven't
I'm
given
telling
anybody
you.
any reason to think that.
Okay, give me a reason why you believe that human beings are in 90% are in the 90% cause of suffering.
Because there is a significant amount of suffering that is caused by non-humans, and if anything, you should be unclear. I mean, we don't really. It's kind of unclear how you quantify what percentage of suffering. But I mean, if I were to give an estimate, like I'm going to think about human history, and I'm going to think of the main causes of suffering throughout human history. Um,
Mm-hmm.
okay, throughout human history, like when humans first came about in evolutionary history, they didn't have any tech, presumably like the main causes of suffering would be lack of food,
Mm-hmm.
starvation,
Mm-hmm.
exposure to the elements. Those will be the main causes. There could be other causes, but those presumably will be the main one. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
just like look at different periods of history, the main causes of suffering are just not things that humans actually cause. And that's just considering humans. Also, what about animal suffering? I mean, some animal suffering is almost all animal suffering is not caused by humans. I mean, we cause a lot of animal suffering through factory farming, but a lot of animal suffering just occurs in the wild and it isn't caused by humans at all. And it almost completely swamps the animal suffering caused by humans. And so if you had to place an estimate, it would actually be that the opposite. It'd be that maybe 90% or more suffering is caused by humans. But of course, you're just going to hand away that away because you just want to believe what you believe. You don't care about evidence. You just
Mm. Anyways, I mean, the truth is, well, what about massacres? Are natural disasters the cause of massacres, or the
Jesus Christ,
there's a lot. Trust me,
you're
if you
just
look
not
through
even
history, trust me, there is
not
a
even
lot, and even till this date, there's still a lot and a lot.
just like when you have like just fucking dumbasses like this. It's just like so annoying.
I think
Oh,
we've
by the
got
way,
one.
Kason, I was reading that paper you sent. I didn't finish it, but I read, I think, most of it. I need to finish that later.
What did you think of it?
I mean, I thought that, I mean, his main argument, there's a lot of moving parts. I can't really say exactly. I'm probably gonna have to go back and think about it more. But what he was saying did not seem very plausible to me, particularly when he was talking about whether it's good or bad to bring someone into existence if they'll live like a life that's really bad, a lot of suffering, or he also talked about whether or not you can evaluate a life as worth living. Anything
Yeah.
you actually can't say some lives are not worth living. I think that's clearly not true. Also, but like his argument had a bunch of premises and a bunch of like you know sub arguments and all the So I have to like go back and
hmm
look at it again.
Yeah. Did you get to the part about origin essentialism?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I know there was a part where he was talking about how. Are you talking about the part where he says like certain causal conditions are necessary for like someone to come into existence, and if something is like necessary for someone to come into existence, then it couldn't possibly be that it wouldn't be unloving
Right.
for you to
Yeah.
but yeah I'm around that I'm around that part, maybe a bit after.
Wait, what are we talking about?
Okay.
It's who wrote that paper? Was it Coons or Proust? I can't remember.
It was Coons.
Coons is like insane, by the way. That guy is like evil.
Bro, I honestly love him, but he never talks about the problem of evil. And so when I found this paper, I was like, no fucking way. He says some stuff I haven't really heard a lot of people say before.
What are we on right now?
I don't
Hello?
know.
What are we talking about?
Wait, I want to know why you said that he's evil.
He's like, I mean, I'm talking about his politics. He's like
Yeah,
extreme left.
okay. You've seen his Twitter, right? Or his ex?
Yeah, isn't there one time he said something like, I can't even remember. There's this like hilarious comment he made one time about some like politician being like divine or I don't know.
Yo, you want to talk about the prompt? So I think the best argument for God is going to be like a modal contingency argument, where we define contingent in the possible role semantical account. And I just say that the universe is contingent. By universe, I just mean the collection of all entities. And by onticity, I just mean first order entities with a sufficient account of the Heideggerian definition of ontic. So why'd I get muted? What? All right, I'll continue then. And I'd say that the universe is contingent. If it's contingent, then it needs a better explanation. And needs, within that instance, is going to be like a nomological sense. And by nomological, I just mean pertaining to the laws, specifically the laws of metaphysics. And when I say that God explains the universe, I'm going to be using Finian grounding. Because if it's another contingent entity explaining the universe, it doesn't like ultimately explain anything, therefore it's a partial grounding. But if it's a necessary entity, explaining the universe is a complete grounding. All right, that's my argument. Any response?
Wait, so you said the universe is contingent. What if there's a multiverse?
So he cooked on that though.
Yo, hello.
Yo,
Um, I'm actually an atheist, but I wanted to hear like y'all's best argument for atheism.
for atheism.
Yeah.
Basically, like an abductive inference, or like there's no total evidence oriented in such a way towards the conclusion such that God exists. Stuff like that. For atheism.
Probably the problem of evil.
The
So
EOPE.
I'm not gonna lie.
Well, there's a bunch of contradictions in our religions. It seems to be completely man-made. Is probably why I started being atheist.
No, yeah, I definitely get that, but I was looking for like a formal argument.
Hmm.
What is an argument, and what does it mean for an argument to be formal?
Just put into a form of premises and then a conclusion.
Oh, what is
Or
that?
you
I'm
yourself
sorry.
premises, bro.
I'm new. I'm new, so if I ask too many questions, just let me know. What is a premise?
You know, I'm not interested in explaining all these things.
Isn't it like a reason?
It's a reason.
Something like that.
Sorry, I'm new.
But yeah, if you don't have that shit, I'll just drop down.
Are you running?
So could we debate God?
Running from what? I'm not even making like I'm not contesting an argument or making one. I don't know if you understand what I'm running from.
I don't know. It just sounds like a runner.
I just asked you a question because I was curious, but I don't even know what I'd be running from. But all right.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah, I
either,
don't
but
know why
you
you're
just sound like
running.
you just sound like a runner.
Running is really weird. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why Patenza is running.
All right.
It's fine. It's fine. We've all ran at some point.
He just ran again.
All right, I'm gonna head out. I'm not running though.
All right, I'm back, boys. What's up?
What's up?
I was on a call.
Why do you have a Gemini image?
Me?
Who uses Gemini? Yeah, it's Gemini.
Huh? What are you talking about? I was born in January. The fuck?
Brother, what? All right.
The fucking
Yo, what?
AI? Oh. I thought you were talking about like the fucking star symbol. Yeah, because that's just how I made the background. Huh?
Loki gave my argument, but I stumped everyone. It is so metaphysically precise, you know?
What was the argument?
Yeah, the argument was this is the this is tag, you know? This gave tag.
What?
I'm ready for Mason to become a theist. I heard it's happening sometime soon. I'm not sure
I've
when.
heard a couple of people say that Mason's leaning more towards theism.
Thomism.
Mason's gonna become. Is Mason gonna become a Thomist? Thomist Arc Mason?
I have like some sui generis faculty that no one else has that is able to apprehend the fact that he's going to become a theist within the next 3 months.
Next thing you know, we're gonna see Mason running tag on Monkey Boy's panel. He's gonna be like, "All right, Monkey, premise one, buddy."
No, he told me his favorite argument for theism is Aquinas' first way.
Yeah, for sure, Mason loves that. Mason like agrees with all of the metaphysics.
Yeah, he doesn't really. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hello? No, we
Yes.
can't
Yeah.
hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Well, I literally just barely saw this. Are there any kind of house rules to start or what?
Just live, laugh, and love.
Oh, there you have it. I don't know who I'm directing the questions at, but basically I have about 3 questions that kind of lead me to believe in God in terms of just kind of how I come to it. And so the first thing I ask is, does everything have a beginning? Now, if you ask, or if you say that everything does have a beginning, well, then it leads to the question of, okay, well, who created things? Like there has to be something or someone that made everything that has a beginning. Like, does that make sense?
No, not really.
Okay, so I'll say it in a different way.
No, I mean, like, I understand what you're trying to say. Might not agree with it, though.
Right. Well, like I said, that's really the first place that it starts off is, like I said, does everything have a beginning? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, what is the thing that doesn't have a beginning?
Logic.
Do what?
The logic, which is a second order entity, does not have a beginning.
I mean, well, logic's not tangible, though. Like, you can't hold logic.
Exactly, it's not temporal.
Right? So I'm saying as far as, like, all things existential, all things that exist have a or do all things that exist in physical space have a beginning?
Yes.
I'm not sure why I would think that.
Right. So who or what created the very first thing then?
Well, why should I think that all things that are physical have a beginning?
Well, name me something that doesn't have a beginning. Like, name me something physical that doesn't have a beginning. Everything that you
A
view in your
pivot.
everyday life has a genesis.
Well, that's just not answering my original question. Sure, right? Like I can hold the view that the universe is physical and the universe did not have a beginning.
Right. So, some people might say that the universe doesn't have a beginning. Now, how can you prove that it's the universe that didn't have the beginning or a creator that didn't have the beginning?
But now you're just completely shifting the burden, right? I answered the question. I just want to know why I should think that all physical things have a beginning.
Because there's nothing in your day-to-day life that would suggest otherwise.
That's not a reason to think that all physical things have a beginning, right? Can you like, even if I were to say sure, right? Let's take that. Why should I agree with that?
I mean, so I don't understand how you're coming to the conclusion that it's more logical to think that things cannot have beginnings sometimes, or
Saying that, I'm saying that it could be the case, but I'm saying it is the case.
and so. Well, I guess let me kind of be a little circumspect here. So what I mean by every observable thing that you see has a beginning. Say for instance, individual humans, of course, they all have a beginning, right? Plants all have a beginning. Perhaps things that are manufactured, they all have a manufacture date, right? Everything that we know of in our day-to-day life, we can point at it and we can say, when it was begat, at least within reason, right? Now, say for instance, if we pick up a rock or something, well, we have no clue how old that rock is. That rock has presumably been here for millions and millions, if not billions of years. And so we then have to ask the question, well, for something that's that old, when was its beginning, right?
Okay, let's say that like I agree that all things, right, that exist have a beginning.
Hmm.
All physical things that exist have a beginning. Where do we go from there?
Right. So if we agree that all things that exist have a beginning, we then have to say who or what created those things. Like, so I'm basically taking the question of who created God and I'm turning it around on, who created everything, right? Because the question that, many people would ask, because it's a totally logical one, is, okay, well, if God created everything, then who created God, right? Are you there?
You got a phone call.
Okay. Are you part of the debate too, or is it just the other guy?
You talking to me? Sorry, a couple people dropped.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah,
I
I was
was
just
just
gonna.
I was just listening.
Oh, I see.
I wasn't really like engaging with current points. I was talking to someone in chat.
I see. Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, I'll talk with anybody. I don't know what your position is.
Hey Max, re-request. Let me see. I'll try to add you. Oh, okay. It's saying, well, creator's away. I can't add anybody. Okay, that's what's going on.
No, there you are. Anyway, are you back, host?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
I'm gonna finish it up in a minute, but yeah,
So,
I'm
like I
back.
said, I'm probably asking the question kind of suboptimally, but as far as it goes,
God.
the point that I'm trying to get to, like, I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I'm more or less just trying to explain how I came to things, and I'm trying to lead you through kind of my step by step of it. And I guess the first to word it a different way, what is existence and how did it come to be?
Existence is an entity. It's not an entity. So
It
generally
sounds
come to
like you
be.
be agnostic on that, and maybe you are trying to convince them.
And,
No, what he means is like, what does it mean for like something or anything? You, me, a rock,
right,
air
like,
to exist.
what is existence? Like this thing that we experience, what is it, and how did it come to be?
We don't experience existence either, just to be clear.
Um, am I
Well,
correct in I guess I was listening a little bit before, but kind of like the first question that you asked is that like things things seem to have a beginning, right? Like things that we observe all seem to have a beginning. Are you kind
right.
of like justifying this through like some kind of like inductive inference?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And like I said, really, it's like a three-step kind of deal. And if I were to just like kind of gloss over it, because again, I'm not doing this in like a gotcha sort of hostile
Right.
way. Um, and I'll just like I'll stop trying to do the Socratic back and forth thing. Um, but as far as it goes, I asked myself, okay, what is existence and how did it come to be? And my particular explanation of it is, okay, there has to be something out there that breaks the rules of existence. Because if everything we view has a beginning, and if we just keep on going back, we can't just have an infinite series of beginnings, right? Like there has to be a progenitor,
Is this an
right?
argument for God? Because I know you're getting
Ah,
to the point where you
you
were
literally
saying,
said what I wanted to say, but just enough. But I
yeah,
like the way you put it.
you were beginning to say that like if your principle is that everything has a beginning, or like if everything that exists has a beginning, God exists, God has a beginning. Is that where you're going with this? Or are
No,
you
no.
trying to
So,
argue against
so
that?
like I said, just so just to be clear, before I continue on too much further, I can't provide definitive proof of God or even the absence of God, and that's why I bring in steps 2 and 3 to at least like narrow it down a little bit. Um, but
Yeah.
Wait. If you are arguing for God, then you're going to want a different principle. Because if your first principle or your first premise is everything that begins or everything that exists has a cause, then God falls to that unless you change it.
right, but see,
Unless
no,
you say God doesn't
so
exist, but I don't think you want to
Okay,
do
but
that.
like, I feel
no,
like
you
what he
so
means in this
it's
case
so
is
one second. So with Megs, that was the conclusion that I came to. However, if we say that everything must have a beginning, and we ask, okay, well, what was the beginning of the beginning, right? Who was the progenitor, and so on and so forth. There's two different ways that people go with this. The most common one that we hear of is that people say, well, everything was created, and then people will say, okay, well, who created the creator? Well, people will then just say, well, the universe is and always was, right? They'll default and they'll say, well, it all must have just
That
always been here.
it sounds like you're saying it would have to be infinite, like an infinite regressive causation, or what you're saying is that you don't agree that everything that exists has a beginning because God doesn't have a beginning, God exists. So you'd want to change your principle maybe to like everything that begins to exist has a cause.
but even if you say that everything, let's just say that you say the universe has always existed, that still doesn't explain why the universe exists in the first
Right?
place.
So you're kind of going on Dosky, I guess is what your name is. Um, that was my thoughts on it. Is that okay? Well, again, either the universe is and always was, or there is something, and this is where I will bring in the term the infinite, right? The infinite is something without a beginning, without an end. It's kind of this thing that, like I said, it's supernatural, if you will, because ultimately, in order for things to exist and have beginnings that we can identify, the very first thing that happened had to have been something that broke all of our common conception of what the rules are.
Why do you think that? What?
Right. So the fact that there's matter in front of me kind of negates the basic arguments for how matter is created. So we argue that with Newton's third law, that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can only be transferred. But it
Well,
doesn't say
energy
that
isn't matter.
right. All matter needed energy to be created at some point. And like I said, that's going to be kind of a broad way to say matter.
No, energy and matter aren't the same thing.
Okay, then what's matter?
Steven, you want to come up and talk? Matter is just going to be like material thing. It's going to be like the quarks and everything that quarks can make.
Right. And again, what's the beginning of those? Were they just always there?
Well, I don't take any, like, I'm agnostic onto if any of this existed
But that's the
beforehand.
thing. If we continue this thing like cause and effect, you keep on going back, you have to get to a thing that always was, that wasn't caused by anything else.
Right. A progenitor.
Why?
Yeah,
Exactly.
there could be maybe some like fundamental particles of some sort. And you could also just do an infinite regress of causation in the universe.
Well, infinite regression. I mean, what's logical about an infinite regression? The joke,
What's
or
not?
almost. Well, I say the thing that I've always heard to say that infinite regression is not a thing is there's this old tale of the beginning of the world and that the world is really we're on a turtle's back, right? I forget which culture has this story, and then somebody would ask, well, what's underneath the turtle? Who's the turtle on? And then they would say, well, another turtle's back. And well, what's that one on? Well, another turtle's back, and it's just turtles all the way down. And it just doesn't make any sense.
Why does that not make
Yeah,
sense?
turtles wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But other causations and infinite regressive causations, you're not really arguing against that.
Well, yeah, the turtle point, but I just like anything that is sustained by the cause before it. Why does that not make sense? So, like, why does an infinite regression of causes not make sense?
Like I said, at some point,
Centric.
again, we're getting onto this idea of like the infinite, and it's weird, but in this case, it's like if you're saying that, well, infinite regression is possible, then you're saying, well, infinite regression is the infinite. It's the thing with no beginning and no end. Like there is no, like the turtles do just keep going down, and there is no end to the down. That's like where you plant your flag on how existence came to be.
I wouldn't even know what that means. Infinite is the thing with no beginning and no end. That's kind of like what infinite is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not deviating from the mathematical term any. Like there is in this argument, I'm saying that again, whenever it comes to existence and things being here and us being able to hold things, see things, smell things, and so on and so forth, if we trace their history back far enough, there has to be a time in which either it was all there all the time, always, or we see the very first rock being created or something like that.
Wait, why would everything have to be all there all the time, always?
That's just it. It doesn't have to be, but that is a plausible explanation.
What? No, I know there could be beginnings of things. That doesn't mean that.
Right, and so if you say that all things have a beginning, well, who begot them?
So there's, I mean, I don't want to go over anybody's head here, but there's principles in like the philosophy of science or philosophy of physics where they don't even use causal talk for like beginnings of fundamental particles or of physics, are just like the fundamentals of physics to begin with. They want to use like explanatory. So this like cause and effect kind of talk kind of drops when it comes to fundamental physics on some views. And unless we have like a reason to disagree with that, it's on at least 3 views, and it seems plausible.
Yeah, this is more metaphysical though, so it would include like causal things.
Huh? What is this? How did we get from what? How does this get to God?
Yeah, well, like I said,
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
stuck
know.
on the first point here because I mean I would figure that if you came up to people and you did the 5-year-old question of well how did this person get made, okay, well how did that person get made, well how did that thing get made, and you just go all the way back, and a kid asks you, and you say, well God created it, and then it's like, well who created God, and it's like, oh I don't know, shut up kid. I'm trying to do that thing, but for whatever reason I guess if somebody told you like this causal link and everything, somehow y'all figured out a way that just things don't have a beginning, and that's okay. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, if you're if your contention with like the infinite regression is that there's no beginning, well, you're just saying the issue is that it has no beginning. Well, that's not the view, right? The view is the view is that it's an infinite regression. So you're just begging the question that
What scientific view actually purports this? Because I mean, is it still like the Big Bang? Is that still what we have for like
Science doesn't really
immaterial?
talk about causality, right? It's more of a metaphysics thing.
Right. I mean, there are some theoretical views that do have like an infinite universe as a possibility, though.
Yeah,
Rephrase
there's
the question,
models
please.
like yeah, there's models like the CCC model that posit like universe always existing and just going through different phases. There's
And
different
so
types
just
of like
and like I said, I don't
infinite
disagree with those
universes.
views because again, and I guess to say it this way, if you follow the causal chain of things, you eventually end up at a chicken or the egg situation where it is functionally impossible to tell whether there was a chicken on day number 1 that begat an egg on day number 2, or whether there was an egg on day number 1 that begat a chicken. It's
I don't think that's the case though.
I mean,
Someone might say that like if evolution's true, then we know that it was the egg that hatched the chicken that came first, the mutation.
as far as evolution goes, I mean, what's up? Oh my goodness.
I just don't really understand. Like, are you trying to say that like even if we have an infinite regress, what explains why anything exists at all, or like
So
what's the
what I'm trying to say is, even if you do have an infinite regression, you're having to use something that defies logic to describe something that we can hold, that's totally concrete and is just kind of obviously is.
An infinite regress doesn't really define logic. It may be like unintuitive in some senses, right? But there's nothing about an infinite regress that's illogical.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There would have to be a contradiction in the view, and I mean maybe if you can produce one, but maybe it seems like unreasonable to you or improbable, but illogical is taking it a step further to say that it's going to be like a contradiction or it's going to go against one of the laws of logic.
I mean, so if we like I said, I'm struggling to get this across why, again, infinite regression doesn't seem like a sound model of Genesis, let's say, of again, like the beginning of everything. Because again, it's like where does it start? Where
Yeah, I
does it
mean, I
end?
think that's the issue, right? You're trying to in a model of Genesis, right? You're positing that there is a beginning. On
Right.
a view of infinite regress, there are no beginnings. So you can't say, well, where is the beginning on a view that doesn't have a beginning?
Right. And I try to tell you that kind of breaks material logic, and you're saying that it doesn't. Where it's just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah,
In what
we
way
run
though?
into infinite things all the time.
Well, like, do you understand that for something to be illogical or break logic, it would have to violate one of the laws of logic, right? We would have to produce some contradiction. For example, like something that would be illogical is to say there exists a married bachelor. Because what we understand a bachelor to be is an unmarried man, and to say that he's married and unmarried would be a contradiction in terms.
And as far as a contradiction in terms to word it in that kind of way, I would then say that things that something that exists but has no beginning, like that seems like, to say, for instance, if a person is born, or if a person exists, we know that a facet of human existence is that they're born. However, if we run into somebody who is human but isn't born, we would then start to question whether that person is actually human, because they aren't born, like they have no beginning, they're just there.
Sure.
And in that same way, um, I mean, there's just nothing that I can think of where it exists and we just have a presumption that nothing, like at some point in time, that was just it.
Okay, so like it seems like in order to support this, like I was saying before, right? You're kind of making an inductive case insofar as you're saying, look, it
Yeah.
seems as if though the things that we observe around us somehow have some beginning, right? And so there's nothing that I observe that has no beginning, and so you're kind of justified in concluding that things seem to have a beginning, right?
Right.
Inductively.
Yeah, I would call it like Platonic, or working from the reverse and everything like that. But
Yeah.
I would say that's generally fair, because again, everything around us has a beginning. At no point in time do we have enough examples of things without a beginning to assume that there's something out there that
Right.
doesn't.
Okay, so like let's say we hold to this principle that the things that we observe around us have a beginning.
Correct.
Okay, now where do we go from here?
So where we go from there is we say, okay, this is where it comes in, and you say, okay, well then who created God? And at the point that you have somebody who created God, well, at that point, God is a lesser form and all these
Wait a
other
minute. How
things.
do we get to God? I thought we just laid out a principle that we look
Well,
around
so
the world and we observe that things have beginnings.
I
So
think I skipped the point then. Let
okay,
me,
yeah,
yeah. So if we assume that everything has a beginning, we will then ask the series of questions where we say, well, what created that? What created that? What created that?
right.
And unless you can just, at some point in time, any person that you ask is going to be stumped, and they're pretty much going to give you two answers. They're going to say that either A, it always was there, which is what a lot of the old Greek religions would say, that, in the beginning of the universe, it was just, the universe was there, and then something happened that created the gods, right? But then the universe was there first. Um, and then in more like Abrahamic religions, they'll say that there was nothing at first but God, and then God created everything, right? But either way, at some point of asking, well, why, where did that come from? Where did that come from? You're going to get to the very, very first thing that ever happened. And my point from here is to say that the very first thing that ever happened is going to almost necessarily go against everything you just said to get there. And no matter whether you have the environmental view, is what I'll call it. So the environmental view is that the environment was always here. So, for instance, like the rocks or the matter that created the rocks, at some point in time, or not even time, just eternity has always had these rocks, right? Um, and again, the God point of view would be that, well, God always was here. But either way, at some point in time, you have to be asked a question that you're going to give a totally illogical answer to, whether you go either direction.
I don't see why I don't see why it has to be illogical, right? At this point, what we've established in the first kind of observation is that we look about the world and we observe that things have beginnings,
Correct.
and
Yeah,
so
if we observe everything around us and we
right.
take that as our input data, we can
Why
only
why should
conclude.
we why
Yeah.
should we then conclude that um, like foundationally something has to be illogical. I don't see how we're making that jump.
So let me describe it in terms of like a family tree. So as a family tree goes further and further along the line, it's going to its base is going to be like a pyramid where it's going to be really really wide, right? And let's say you have a child who's asking like, well, who is my grandpa? And then you say, well, you have two grandpas
No,
actually.
look, I get it.
Yeah,
We've established that, like, in this view, like, inductively, right, it seems as if though there can't be an infinite of things, right? So there has to be something that started it foundationally, right? I get that.
yeah,
So
and
now,
the foundational thing that started it ends up negating everything
yeah, but
you. So if
why
you're
though? Why?
okay,
That's what I'm not getting.
so I'm describing it in terms of a conversation with like a child. Maybe that's like a bad way to do it, but um, as
You're
far as the child goes, if the child is asking you again, how did this come to be? How did this come to be?
ask a question that maybe might get us somewhere.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay. So when you're looking at the scenario of the child, or is what you're really trying to get at that there's things that could have been different, and you're going back through this causal chain, and you're saying at some point there has to be something that's like maybe necessary, and it couldn't have been otherwise to explain all the
Yeah,
things.
at some point, you have a leap of logic, to use that phrase.
I
So
don't know what that means.
at some
Oh, hold on, I
point.
got low blood sugar. Give me a sec.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still trying to understand why are we to infer that at some point we get to something that's going to be illogical or take a leap of logic?
I hope I'm not sounding repetitive, but um, as far as it goes, if again going back to the analogy of the child, if the child's asking me, well, how did Z or how did A come to be? Well, A came to be because of B, and
Hmm.
well, how did B? Well, B came to C, and then at the end of the alphabet, suddenly you say, well, he was just always there, right? Well, how come you're able to follow this chain of A to B, B to C, C to D? At the very end, you can't go from Z to the unknown, right? In fact, you could do that. You could just say, I don't know. And that's a pretty honest answer, too. But at some point in time, you reach the end of the alphabet in terms of a causal link. And from there, you're either going to say, again, something that defies every single sequential letter jump that you just did, like there is no letter after Z, right?
Okay.
What did you think about what I said earlier about the views in fundamental physics that like at some point they're not using causal talk anymore. They're using more like explanations.
My instinctual, like my gut response to hearing that is at some point in time, because this is where I am personally. So in terms of trying to explain the world, um, you know, um, like Aristotelian logic only got me so far. And at some point, you can only really figure out things by studying their effects and not worrying about how they began. So honestly, and honestly, trying to establish the beginning of things is a super contentious issue anyway. It's hard to prove, and it really doesn't actually lead you to any productive ends to begin with. So whenever I heard that, I thought it was like mostly a pragmatic thing.
No, I don't think it is. At least in the views that I'm thinking of, I think that they're just saying like the kind of causation that like every cause has an effect is just no longer applicable when it comes to like more fundamental physics. Just
Not every cause has an effect. I'm stating
oh,
that
okay.
every effect has a
So
cause.
cute.
I'm going backwards.
Sure. Um, every effect has it. Well, I mean, that might still be using that kind of causal talk to use like the effect talk as well. Maybe like because they'd be switching it to like everything has an explanation.
So to say it another way, if I'm viewing something and I view it, let's say at 1 o'clock, and at 2 o'clock it does something different, or it looks different, or I get a different measurement on it, or something like that. I would then, based on everything that I know, say, well, something must have happened. And if something happened, I would say, well, what caused that thing to happen?
Yeah, look, but what you're doing isn't you're not applying this to like fundamental physics, and this is where it's going to be different because the physicists would agree that in like the material universe that we have, that there is cause and effect talk. It's saying that they think the principles are just different for fundamental physics.
And ultimately, it's crazy because like I kind of think the same thing. Again, not to like, I don't know, I'm not trying to sound smarter than I am or whatever, but the point that I've come to, there's an old phrase which is you can't contemplate the infinite, which is kind of what I get onto as far as this goes. So whenever you dig deeper and you're like, okay, well, why does this happen and why does that happen? You know, assume it is a mistake in logic to assume that the material world's rules apply to whatever this other stuff is.
Absolutely. No, I would agree.
Yeah.
That would be like a composition fallacy, that just because we have things in a part that they would apply to the whole.
That's actually like part and parcel is why they were making the distinction, why they were like illustrating the distinction between a nomological issue, like an issue with like physical laws of the universe, or and let me finish, and
Sure.
and a logical issue, right? That's why they were making that distinction.
And I like that we're coming onto the same page now, because like I said, the first thing that I was trying to describe, now that we kind of have the same language down, is I was describing all of these causal links to eventually come to the realization that there is something beyond causality that we can't use our typical rule book to explain.
Yeah.
And now, as far as what that is, this is where I would say, you go from the realm of Socrates to the realm of Plato. So with Socrates, you could actually, it's the scientific method. You measure things and you say like, well, if there's this much of this much, and I can do the stoichiometry and all this other stuff, and I could perfectly draw a line this way and that way and say all what happens. At some point in time, you